It was meant to be a pivotal moment for Elon Musk. The courtroom was full, the stakes were incredibly high, and the tension was clear. Although cameras weren't allowed, major news outlets had reporters ready to capture every detail of what many considered one of the biggest Supreme Court hearings in years. At the heart of it all were Supreme Court Justice Coney Barrett and tech billionaire Elon Musk. The main issue was whether Musk's social media company, XC Corp, had violated federal communication laws by refusing to comply with new government rules on content moderation. Many believed this case would have a significant outcome. Most people expected Musk to be sharply criticized, maybe even punished. The government had built a solid case, and Justice Barrett, known for her sharp and direct questioning, seemed prepared to hold Musk accountable. But what happened next took everyone by surprise. As Justice Barrett began her questioning, all eyes were on her. Then, in a moment that would later go viral, she pointed directly at Elon Musk and accused him of ignoring the law. Her words were firm and clear, and it seemed like the beginning of a legal takedown. But Musk's reaction was unexpected. He didn't panic or get defensive. Instead, he calmly reached for a folder and pulled out some documents. What Musk revealed was something no one, not even the Supreme Court, had seen before. His evidence didn't just shift the tone of the hearing, it completely turned the case on its head. This wasn't just a CEO being questioned by a judge, it was something much bigger. Musk came prepared, not just with opinions, but with solid facts, court rulings, and thorough legal research. As the hearing went on, it became clear that this case wasn't just about one company refusing to follow the rules. It was about the limits of government power over private platforms, and whether that pressure crossed the line into violating the Constitution. To understand why this moment was so important, it's crucial to know what the case was really about. The legal battle was between the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, and X Corp, the company that owns the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, now called X, and its owner, Elon Musk. The FCC accused X Corp of refusing to comply with new federal rules on content moderation. These rules were part of a broader government effort to control the spread of harmful, false, or dangerous content on social media. According to the FCC, all major platforms were expected to follow specific guidelines for moderating content. In simple terms, rules about what could and couldn't be shared online. The rules outlined what kind of content needed to be reviewed, flagged, or removed. Most other platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and even TikTok followed these guidelines without much resistance. But X Corp pushed back. Elon Musk made it clear that he believed in more open speech online, and under his leadership, X Corp refused to adopt some of the new policies. The government saw this as a violation of communication laws. Over several months, the conflict between the FCC and Musk grew more intense. The FCC sent formal notices, media outlets covered every development, and legal experts appeared on news shows to explain the stakes. Most people believed Musk was likely to lose the case. Some even predicted massive fines or restrictions on X Corp's operations. When the case finally reached the Supreme Court, many expected it to be straightforward. Musk would be forced to comply, the government would win, and the matter would be settled for good. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, a respected conservative known for her strict interpretation of the Constitution, was expected to take a firm stance. Most assumed she would question Musk aggressively, leaving him with little chance of success. Both legal experts and the media shared the same prediction. People thought Musk had overestimated himself. He wasn't a lawyer, and he wasn't trained in constitutional law. What chance did he really have against some of the sharpest legal minds in the country, especially when the government seemed to have an airtight case? But what almost no one knew was that Musk hadn't been ignoring the law. He had been studying it for nearly a year. Behind the scenes, he had been preparing for this very moment, diving deep into constitutional law, court precedents, and key legal decisions that would form the backbone of his defense. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, the Supreme Court courtroom was packed like never before. Every seat was filled, not just with journalists and legal experts, but with curious citizens eager to witness history. Those who had followed the story from the beginning could feel the anticipation in the air, a sense that something big was about to unfold. People expected fireworks, and they got them, just not in the way they imagined. Elon Musk sat calmly at the respondents' table, dressed in a simple dark suit and blue tie. He appeared focused and ready. His legal team sat beside him, but it was clear that he intended to speak for himself. That decision alone surprised many legal analysts. Most defendants, especially in front of the Supreme Court, rely on their lawyers to do the talking. But Musk wasn't like most people. He insisted on personally answering the court's questions, a move some called brave, while others thought it was reckless. Justice Amy Coney Barrett spoke first. Known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense style, she got straight to the point. "Mr. Musk," she began. Her voice was firm but controlled as she spoke. "Your platform has repeatedly ignored formal requests to comply with the Section 230 modifications outlined in the 2023 Communications Act. Why do you believe X Corp is exempt from the same legal standards every other platform must follow?" The room fell silent, and every eye was fixed on Musk. She began slowly. "With respect, Justice Barrett, we never claimed to be exempt from valid laws." Barrett raised an eyebrow. "Your actions suggest otherwise," she replied. "You've received 17 formal notices." Musk responded calmly. "Actually, 16. That single-word correction, polite but confident, caused a ripple of quiet gasps in the room. It was incredibly rare for anyone, especially someone who wasn't a lawyer, to correct a Supreme Court justice. In open court, Musk revealed even more. Internal FCC documents showing that the agency had deliberately looked for ways to pressure platforms into moderating content, even if that pressure crossed constitutional boundaries. The key line from a commissioner's notes read, "Technical compliance rules give us another way to get the same results." This revelation caught the justice's full attention. Justice Allo leaned forward and asked, "Are you saying the FCC tried to get around a Supreme Court ruling?" Musk didn't hesitate. "The documents speak for themselves, Your Honor," he replied, confidently. In that moment, the entire case shifted. Musk was no longer just defending his company. He was accusing a government agency of trying to bypass the Constitution. And instead of ignoring it, the court, especially Justice Barrett, began to take it very seriously. Justice Barrett began to take Musk's claims very seriously. At first, it seemed like she would be his toughest critic. Her firm questions and sharp tone made it clear she had little patience for excuses. But things were starting to shift. Musk wasn't acting like a CEO backed into a corner. He wasn't dodging questions or making vague statements. Instead, he calmly presented court precedents, quoted legal decisions word for word, and even cited opinions written by the justices themselves. What began as a tough grilling was quickly turning into a serious legal debate, and the judges were paying close attention. One key moment came when Musk quoted Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent from a lower court ruling, where she had written that the constitutional concerns raised by X Corp were significant and worthy of a full Supreme Court review. As Musk read her words aloud, Justice Jackson raised her eyebrows, not in disagreement, but in recognition. She hadn't expected to hear her own words used to defend a company accused of ignoring regulations. Even more surprising was Justice Barrett's reaction. Initially skeptical and almost dismissive, her expression grew more serious as she examined the documents Musk provided, which included internal FCC emails and meeting notes. It became clear that Musk wasn't bluffing. He had uncovered something substantial. He even showed that the FCC had used Barrett's own ruling in the Net Choice versus Paxton case to justify its actions, revealing a deeper legal strategy. The strategy Musk exposed was a workaround, a method to sidestep constitutional limits by using technical regulations. It clearly struck a nerve with Justice Barrett, who had written the very decision the FCC seemed to be exploiting. She understood exactly what Musk was pointing out. The FCC had tried to use its regulatory power to achieve something it couldn't legally mandate through direct orders. Looking up from the documents, she addressed Musk. "You came very well prepared, Mr. Musk. This isn't the kind of argument we usually see from non-lawyers." Musk didn't smile or gloat. He simply nodded. "That's because I didn't come here to make excuses," he replied calmly. "I came here to defend constitutional rights, not just for my company, but for any platform that could be pressured into doing something illegal under the First Amendment." That was the moment the entire tone of the hearing changed. Justice Thomas began asking deeper questions, and Justice Alo leaned in, clearly more engaged and studying the details closely. Even Chief Justice Roberts, who had been mostly silent up to that point, now appeared noticeably more engaged, carefully examining the documents. What began as a straightforward case of corporate non-compliance was quickly evolving into a serious constitutional challenge. Meanwhile, the Solicitor General, the government's lead attorney, tried to counter. "Mr. Musk's interpretations are self-serving," he argued. "He's not a legal expert." But before he could continue, Barrett, who had initially seemed poised to challenge Musk, interrupted firmly. "Counselor," she said, "the authenticity of these documents is not in question right now, and their content raises very serious concerns." That was the turning point. The momentum had shifted, and what Musk had walked into the courtroom with was no longer just a defense. It was the foundation of a major constitutional debate. Musk had been expected to lose. Some even mocked him for thinking he could stand up to the government's top legal minds. But through calm, well-prepared arguments and carefully chosen evidence, he did more than just defend himself. He changed how the court viewed the entire issue. Perhaps the most surprising shift came from Justice Barrett, the very one many thought would shut him down, who was now taking his arguments seriously. As the hearing progressed, it became clear that this case was no longer just about X Corp. Musk made it clear that his company wasn't the only one affected. The real issue was whether government agencies could use complex regulations and pressure tactics to force companies into actions that might violate the Constitution. Especially the First Amendment, which protects free speech. Musk explained that most companies don't challenge the government, not because they agree, but because they're afraid, lack the money, or don't have the time to fight back. The easier path, he said, is to quietly follow the rules, even if they seem wrong. He added, "I just happen to have the resources and determination to push back." That statement resonated with many in the courtroom. The idea that businesses were complying not because the rules were fair, but because resisting them was too difficult, made the justices think more deeply. This wasn't about one man trying to dodge responsibility. It was about a system that made challenging authority nearly impossible. A system that could silence companies through fear or pressure. That was the real issue Musk was highlighting. Justice Barrett, who had begun the day questioning Musk's motives, now seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. She wasn't fully agreeing yet, but she was giving his arguments the serious attention they deserved. This was no longer about a billionaire's ego. It had become a debate about something much bigger. The balance between government power and the rights of private companies in the digital age. Musk had reframed the issue not as a personal battle, but as a warning. If the government could do this to him with all his resources, what could it do to smaller platforms that had no chance of fighting back? That single question changed everything. Just 3 days after the hearing, something unexpected happened. The Supreme Court issued an emergency administrative stay, temporarily blocking the FCC from enforcing its rules on X Corp. Such quick decisions are incredibly rare, and it signaled that the court saw something significant in Musk's arguments. Enough to pause the government's actions immediately. Legal experts and reporters were stunned. News of the hearing and the court's decision spread like wildfire. TV networks, podcasts, and websites all covered the story, and people couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Elon Musk, someone many viewed as merely a tech entrepreneur, had stood before the nation's highest court and made them rethink everything, and held his ground against one of its sharpest justices. CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin said during a live segment, "I've covered the court for decades, and I've never seen anything quite like it." Justice Barrett, whom many thought would be Musk's strongest opponent, actually supported his core argument. Social media exploded hashtags like "Just Your Musk" versus "FCC, your legal genius," and "Just Your Barrett." Showdown started trending. Sketches from the courtroom were shared everywhere, and some news channels even turned parts of the hearing into animations, so people could better follow the dramatic moments. Legal commentators, including professors and former clerks, began talking about the case in a new way. It was no longer about one company's refusal to follow rules now. The case was being described as a potential landmark that could redefine how government agencies interact with private platforms online. Most notably, Justice Barrett, whether people agreed with her or not, was widely praised for her willingness to listen, reconsider her stance based on evidence, and address the issue with the seriousness it deserved. The impact of the hearing spread far beyond Elon Musk or X Corp. Other major tech companies began to take notice. For years, many had quietly followed the FCC's content rules without question. But now, after witnessing what happened in the Supreme Court, they were rethinking everything. Google announced that it would begin reviewing its own compliance with the FCC's rules, especially those related to content moderation. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, took it a step further by filing a request to join Musk's case as an interested party, publicly supporting the constitutional concerns he had raised. Meanwhile, legal scholars across the country joined the conversation. The Harvard Law Review announced a special issue dedicated to the constitutional questions highlighted in the case, and professors from top law schools expressed admiration for Musk's approach. Many even admitted they had to revisit and reread some of the rulings he had cited. Then, just a week later, the story took a dramatic turn when a former FCC staff attorney stepped forward as a whistleblower. In an interview, the former FCC staff attorney confirmed what Musk had claimed, that inside the agency there had been discussions about using technical regulations to indirectly pressure platforms into following certain content rules. We couldn't legally demand those changes directly, she admitted. So, the strategy was to create pressure through compliance requirements. This revelation added even more weight to Musk's case. Justice Barrett reportedly instructed her clerks to begin a full review of the FCC's internal communications from the past 3 years. It became clear that this case wasn't just an isolated event. It had sparked a deeper investigation into how much power government agencies truly have over controlling speech online. Outside the courthouse, after the stay was announced, reporters crowded around Elon Musk. One of them asked how he had managed to hold his own in front of the Supreme Court. Musk's response was simple. "I'm not a lawyer, but when something this important is on the line, you take the time to understand it," he explained. Musk revealed that it was actually Justice Barrett's own past opinions that helped him build his case. Her ruling in Net Choice had been clear about the dangers of government overreach. "I just followed the same logic she laid out," he explained. When asked if he expected to change her mind, Musk replied, "That wasn't my goal. I wasn't trying to win her over, just to present a strong argument backed by the Constitution. Justice Barrett has a reputation for fairness. I trusted her to hear me out." In the days that followed, legal experts acknowledged that Musk had done something rare. He used the court's own logic to challenge government authority in a way few had anticipated. And perhaps the most surprising part was that he might have changed the future of digital free speech in America, not by defying the law, but by understanding it better than most ever expected.